Hello, this is Harry Watt from North Carolina State University Wood Products Extension. This is a short video describing lumber drying for the small producer. I am a wood product specialist at North Carolina State University. This is part of a grant of 6 workshops that we did in 2021 and 2022 that was held in the northern U.S., which is Region 9 of the U.S. Forest Service. And these workshops were in 3 flavors, and those were small sawmill business, live edge slab business, and dry kiln business. And they're directed for the small sawmill operation that would be a locally focused small business. This is a U.S. Forest Service grant that was offered through the U.S. Forest Service out of the Princeton, West Virginia Wood Education and Resource Center. The grant number is here on the front screen. My email is there, and my website is listed here on the title page. If I can be of any assistance to anyone, just let me know how I can be of help. The work at NCSU and the Wood Education Center is based on funding through this grant, and we do not do any discrimination for any reason. We have an open door policy, and we will help anyone that we can help. Should anyone have a complaint, they can register that with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Forest Service, the Wood Education Center, or North Carolina State University. A few things about lumber. Lumber comes from trees, and trees have water. And the logs, when they're sawn down in the forest, are generally wet, typically 65% moisture content for a species like oak. And that's from U.S. Forest Service studies. And they have estimates from all the species, and they're in the U.S. Forest Service publications. There's a lot of misinformation or wrong thinking when it comes to moisture content in wood. We're not saying that 65% of the weight of that oak log is water. What we're doing is we're comparing how much water there is in the wood to how much wood there is in the wood. So we can take a piece of wood and dry all the water out by heating it up to 212 degrees for a length of time till the weight just zeroes out to being constant. The example that I like to give has to do if I have a oak cant that was just cut from a fresh log, and let's say that cant weighed 165 pounds. Then if I completely dried it, got every drop of water out of it, and I had 100 pounds left over, I would have lost 65 pounds of water. So that would say that that cant was 65% moisture content, because we had 65 pounds of water to 100 pounds of wood. So you can see 65 pounds of water is a lot, and that's why dry wood is much lighter than wet wood. Lumber drying basics is what we're really trying to do is to have dry air around our wet wood. So over time, water leaves the wood and exits the drying chamber. We have in our methodology over the years started with heated dry kilns, typically steam in commercial applications, and we had fans that would blow the air, which was drier than the wood, through so we put sticks between it. And on the left you can see a pack of lumber. This happens to be a photo from the Wood Education Center in Princeton, West Virginia, and that's our dry kiln. And if you look at the wood, it happens to be yellow poplar from one of our workshops. And if you notice, the pack there is a 10-foot pack, but some of the boards are 8 feet long. So what we do is we pull all the ends out to each end and alternate the boards which way we pull it, and that squares the pack up and gives the most support for the ends of the lumber. If we pulled them all to one end, then the other end would be ragged, and some of those ends would twist and warp. If you look at the dry kiln, you can see on the right at the top is where the fans are. That blows the air in a circle through the heating coils, then down the other side through the lumber and back up. So the hot air is making a cycle. The left side, those heating coils have got, they're for steam, and they have fins on the pipes that helps dissipate or transfer the heat from the boiler to the air in the kiln. What you don't see is on the roof at the top is some vents that let out the wet air. And there's a control there that operates when to turn the heat on and off and when to turn the vents open and close. And that's how we control a kiln like that. On the right is what you see for somebody who has some live edge slabs, and they're drying them in a drying shed. And this shed is open on the back. These are fairly thick slabs, so we don't want excessive air. And that curtain on the top there that you see can roll down when needed to slow down the air going through there, so we're not drying too fast and getting defects. If we dry too fast, we get splits and checks. If we dry too slow, we get stain and mold. So we really have to know our science to be able to dry wood properly. A traditional dry kiln looks like this if you was to cut through it. And the lumber is stacked up in packs with sticks in between, so the forklift can handle it. Overhead is a fan that can blow air in both directions. Typically we'll run 4 to 6 hours in one direction and then the other. The heating coils are on both sides of the fan so we can reheat the air. And on the top is vents, so when the air is too wet, we're going to push the air out. So in this diagram you can see the air is moving from right to left in the fan, and that'll push it out the top whenever the vent opens up. And when the fan reverses, it'll be the other vent that opens and closes. There are baffles there, and the baffles are to keep the air from not shorting going through the lumber. So we want to use the baffles to make sure that all the air we generate with the electric fans is going to go through the wood. And on the right it shows what we call the wet bulb temperature, or the wet bulb itself. It has a wet water sock, and it indicates to the controller how wet or dry the air is. So the operator will set it at a certain level, and when the air gets too wet, the wet bulb will rise because the sock slows down drying. As the sock evaporates water, it cools down. So we can figure out how wet or dry the air is based on the wet bulb temperature. The dry bulb to temperature, typically we just have one, and it measures how hot the air is in the kiln. Solar drying is a topic that a lot of the small operators are interested in. It's the cheapest dry kiln you can have is a solar kiln, and it will kiln dry wood, and typically it will not heat treat wood. Heat treated, we get up to 160 degrees or whatever number we want to kill bugs. Kiln drying is we're concerned with the moisture content inside the wood. When we dry pallets or heat treat pallets, we're not concerned so much with the moisture content because the wood is so exposed it dries sufficiently below 19%. So solar drying is something that we can use to kiln dry our wood. And on the left is some Forest Service drawings of a solar dry kiln that has the slanted roof that has panels like fiberglass and polycarbonate that let the heat in. The inside is painted black, the fan circulates the air, and there's vents in the kiln to remove excess moisture. And there's been a lot of thoughts over the years. The one design that has pretty much settled is the ones on the left. The top right and the bottom right are ones that people thought might be a good idea, but over time we've moved on to doing other things. This is a photograph. It's typically in Virginia, at Virginia Tech. There's a summer workshop that Brian Bond puts on where they build one of these and go over all the features for it. And at the top you can see there's 4 vents, and that's actually more than what's needed because the kiln typically is not fully tight. It doesn't need a lot of venting, it vents itself. But the sun shines through the clear roof, heats up the room because everything inside is black, and over time moisture moves from the wood into the air and then it's exhausted. Typically these kilns come in two flavors. You can load them like this one from the back, full size with a forklift directly, or you can have some kind of a cart system where it rolls in from the ends. Here's another example photo from that. It looks like the same one, and you can see the front side where the sun heats the kiln. The amount of footage that you have of the collector depends on what you're trying to dry, and you do have to be careful with woods like oak not to have too much exposure in that roof. The dehumidification drying here shows like a rectangular room or a square room with a DH unit on the inside. There's fans overhead pushing the air through the lumber. Now this kiln does not have venting. What happens is the condenser condenses water into a drain and it goes outside the building. So this is newer than our traditional steam kilns, and it works. It takes electricity, and it's real critical to have a tight room so you're not bringing in outside air and drying outside air instead of the wood. In the solar drying species, we look at how much collector you need, and typically 100 square feet works well if you have a slow drying species like oak. Faster drying species, you may get as high as 200 square feet per 1,000 board feet. And it is possible, if you build one with 200 square feet, that you block off some of it if you're trying to dry oak. For species that give off moisture very fast, a fan shed or outside other drying can move faster than drying in the kiln. So if it's an easy to dry wood like yellow poplar or yellow pine, you may want to air dry it before you put it in your solar kiln to increase the footage you can get out of the kiln on a yearly basis. And if you want to catch up with Brian Bond at Virginia Tech, here's his email address, and he has a 3-day or so workshop during the summer when the main students on campus are off. Many people use the DH unit in a reefer trailer. Typically you can find these affordably if you look. Their insulated trailers are fairly tight, and they work well for dehumidification wood drying. In this example I'm showing one that's not the best design because I want to point out what you don't want to do. And if you look to the bottom left, you see the two fans on the side. You really want the fans on the top. And this person probably thought they could get more wood in if they had the fan on the sides. But when you do it on the sides like this, in front of the fan you're getting fast drying. In between you're getting slow drying. And there's just no way around it. You're going to have to slow down the drying if you put the fans on the side. So if you're looking at DH units, you want the fans on the top. And one of the questions you have is, how much space on the side walls do you want? And typically in these reefer units, they're about 7 feet across on the inside. If you have a 4-foot pack, 1.5 feet or so on each side, that works pretty well. As far as loading and unloading these, you have to do them with a cart, and you can see in the bottom left and the upper right a cart that runs on rails. It gets loaded and it gets pulled into the reefer unit. They close the doors and away they go. And on the right is the compressor unit. So this unit is somewhat expensive to use. However, it's simple, and a lot of people use this as their first dry kiln or second dry kiln. They may go solar, then a reefer DH, and then something else is third. But it does work, and it can dry wood properly. Our yard drying, typically we want to put our sticks 12 to 18 inches apart based on the species. Woods that twist a lot like sweet gum, you want to be at 12 inches, and you can go wider with species that don't twist so much like yellow poplar. Sticks are typically 3/4 of an inch thick, 1.25 inches wide, and they'll be 4 feet on a 4-foot pack. The packs for small sawmill, typically 4 feet works well for most of the lifts you have, whether it's a skid steer or a farm tractor or whatever you have, forklift. If you run your aisles for outdoor drying, you're going to space your packs apart based on the species, the airflow, the ease of drying, lumber thickness. Um, if you want to dry slower, you put them closer together. If you want them to dry faster, you move them apart. You do have to be very careful of the location, what direction the winds come from, and you don't want to put a lumber yard right up against a building because there's no airflow. And being next to a building typically has problems with water coming off the roof. So if your aisles run north and south, then the sun can shine in there during the day and it'll be a drier yard than if you run your aisles east and west. Shed drying is a good way to air dry lumber outside. Pole sheds and T-sheds are very common. You need to have the floor of the shed higher than the aisles to keep the rainwater out. If you a lot of times over time you'll put down a lot of gravel in the aisleways, and the next thing you know your rain is going into the buildings and you got to stop and do some grading. So you have to pay attention to that. You also want to watch gutters and the flow of water in the yard. You can use shade cloth on the refractory hardwoods like oak to slow them down and limit splits and checks. Shed drying is very common for live edge slabs and thick lumber, where we really want to have them out of the weather. We don't want them getting wet from rain. We don't want sun hit them. This is a commercial dry kiln showing a very quality dry kiln control room. If you look at the red box, that's an SII controller with a paper recorder that records the temperatures over time. On the left there's a drying oven. We use that to take our samples, cuts, to figure moisture content. There's a set of scales there. What's not in the photo is a bandsaw that we use to cut our samples and look for stresses. This is a very clean and organized system. You can see there's some recording paper on the clipboard there so they can track their drying numbers over time. This is a modular dry kiln made by the Kiln Direct company. It comes in on a modular trailer like a modular double wide home. The owner puts down a slab and brings to it things like electricity and gas or propane if it's heated by those methods. This is a fold-up door. These dry kilns can have doors that open right and left or go up on a track. So this is a good system. It's insulated. It's a factory kiln. It will control the wet bulb, dry bulb, and drying conditions very well. So a kiln like this is a good kiln for somebody starting, because you can add these in modules as the business goes. So it's you can step up your purchases as your business goes. Commercially, we use sample drying boards in our dry kilns, and we can do this for steam kilns and DH kilns and just about anything. But we typically, in the middle of the board somewhere away from the knots, we will take a kiln sample about 24 inches long, and we coat the ends and weigh them. And then we put it back in the kiln, and we use that. We weighed it green, so as it's drying it's getting lighter, and we'll track that and try to follow what we believe the moisture content is in the kiln in that sample board. We will have several samples based on how big the kiln is, but we'll have at least two. Even in a small kiln we'll have two. So the sample boards tell us what to do. As the lumber is drying, we let the air get drier and drier as we go, and what that allows us to do is to monitor how fast we want to dry, and all the wood species have different rates that we want them to dry. This is the hard maple schedule, both the old traditional one on the left and a newer, whiter schedule. And if you notice, the big difference is how hot the kiln gets. The dry bulb degree Fahrenheit column on the left goes to 180 degrees. The one on the right stops at 160. And on the right, the EMC is the equilibrium moisture content, and that is how dry the air is that we're trying to get our wood to. So you see on the left side we start at 16 but with 130 degrees, and on the right we're at 12% moisture content and we start off at 105. So the one on the right is a milder schedule, and Hard maple is at the top value of just about all of our woods in volume production in hardwoods in the U.S. So we really want this wood not to stain or turn brown. If we get it too hot, we can take really valuable hard maple and convert it into less value brown maple. So we should not be using the schedule on the left. And if you look at these schedules, the U.S. Forest Service has multiple publications where we will we will present these schedules, and you can pick and choose and you can adjust them to make them go faster or slower. But if you look at each row, it says the starting moisture content comes down in increments like 5%. So as we check our samples and the wood is drying, we make the changes when we get into the next category. So as the wood dries, it becomes stronger. But if you notice, we really don't crank the temperature up a lot until we get down to that 20%. That's kind of a magic number. We can go hotter there. So if you look at the right side, 20 to 16, 115% degrees, 16% to 12%, we go 125, and less than 12, we go to 160. So as the wood gets stronger, we can accept more stresses from the drying and the kill. I wanted to show this to everybody. This is a short video for small sawmills, just some of the basics. I will be doing more of these videos, and this is part of the 6 workshop grant that we did in 2021 and 2022. If I can be of help, just shoot me an email. I'll be glad to help you. Thank you for watching.